That suitcase found last Monday. A source close to this investigation tells KCRA3 that Melissa Huckabee has admitted to writing that note. It's a note we first reported about on Friday.
I didn't write the note. I'm telling you, I did not write the note.
On the afternoon of March 27, 2009, an 8-year-old girl walked through her neighborhood in Tracy, California, following a routine that was familiar both to her and to those who lived around her. The neighborhood, Orchard Estates Mobile Home Park, was a close-knit residential area where children frequently played outdoors, and neighbors were accustomed to seeing one another daily. A nearby surveillance camera briefly captured the girl as she crossed the street shortly before 4 p.m., calmly moving out of frame. At the time, nothing about the moment appeared unusual. The child was Sandra Cantu. Sandra Renee Cantu was born on March 8, 2001, in Tracy, California. She lived with her mother, grandparents, and 3 older siblings and attended Melville S. Jacobson Elementary School, where she was a second-grade student. According to family members and teachers, Sandra was a trusting and friendly child who enjoyed spending time with friends in the neighborhood. Her family allowed her to play nearby without supervision, a common practice in the community. The day of the disappearance. On Friday, March 27, 2009, Sandra spent time after school at a friend's house until approximately 4 p.m. She returned home briefly and then told her family she was going to play at another friend's home nearby. This raised no concern, as it was consistent with her usual routine and with how children in the Orchard Estates community typically spent their afternoons. When Sandra did not return home for dinner, her family began searching for her in the neighborhood, checking nearby homes and common walking routes she frequently used. As time passed and she could not be located, concern escalated, and neighbors were asked whether they had seen her earlier that afternoon. At 7:53 p.m., after these efforts were unsuccessful, the Tracy Police Department was notified and Sandra was officially reported missing. Law enforcement officers responded quickly, beginning an immediate search of Orchard Estates. Officers canvassed the area, knocking on doors and questioning neighbors, while residents joined in the effort, calling Sandra's name and checking common gathering spots. As night fell, flashlights were used to search between trailers and along walkways. Surveillance footage from near Sandra's home was reviewed and showed her walking across the street shortly before she disappeared. The footage was later released publicly and broadcast on national news networks. Search efforts and early investigation. By the following morning, the search had expanded into a large-scale operation involving multiple agencies. Police dogs were brought in to track scent. Equestrian teams were deployed to search open land near the mobile home park. All-terrain vehicles were used to cover difficult terrain, and a helicopter from the California Highway Patrol conducted aerial searches across the surrounding area. The Federal Bureau of Investigation joined the investigation, and a $22,000 reward was offered for information leading to Sandra's recovery.
Sandra's family just wants to know why, even if they'll never understand.
There's never closure in something like this.
This is just the beginning. Are you kidding? We have to live the rest of our lives without Sandra.
The case drew national attention, and vigils were held throughout Tracy as the community waited for updates. Investigators developed an initial behavioral profile suggesting the perpetrator was likely a white male between 25 and 40 years old, with a history of sexual offenses or child exploitation. Several leads were pursued and evaluated, including a local man who had been seen kissing Sandra on the lips at a public swimming pool 2 years earlier. He was interviewed and ultimately cleared of any involvement. Despite extensive search efforts and numerous tips from the public, no trace of Sandra was found during the first 10 days following her disappearance. As time passed and leads failed to materialize, hope among both investigators and the community gradually diminished. Discovery of the body. On April 6, 2009, 10 days after Sandra was reported missing, workers draining an irrigation pond in San Joaquin County made a critical discovery during routine maintenance of the site. Submerged in the water was a suitcase. Inside the suitcase was the body of Sandra Cantu. The recovery of her body marked a turning point in the investigation. What had begun as a missing child case was now formally classified as a homicide investigation. Autopsy findings. The autopsy revealed significant details about the circumstances surrounding Sandra's death. She had sustained injuries consistent with sexual assault, including trauma to her genital area that matched the diameter of a rolling pin handle. Additional injuries included a laceration on her lower lip and an abrasion on her left elbow. A blood-stained cloth was found tied tightly around her head in a noose-like fashion, indicating restraint. The official cause of death was determined to be homicidal asphyxiation. Toxicology tests revealed the presence of alprazolam, a benzodiazepine commonly prescribed for anxiety, in Sandra's system. This indicated that she had likely been sedated prior to her death. Investigators noted that the presence of the drug suggested a degree of planning and control rather than an impulsive or spontaneous act. Focus on Melissa Huckabee. As investigators revisited the timeline and evidence, attention increasingly focused on Melissa Huckabee, a 28-year-old woman who lived in Orchard Estates. Huckabee was a Sunday school teacher at a local church, and her daughter was one of Sandra's friends. Initially, Huckabee did not match the FBI's behavioral profile, and she was not considered a primary suspect during the early stages of the investigation. However, several unusual details raised concern. On the day Sandra disappeared, Huckabee sent a text message to Sandra's mother suggesting that she tell the police Huckabee had reported a suitcase stolen around 4 p.m., adding that she did not know whether it was relevant. Investigators later viewed this message as significant due to its timing and specificity. The following day, during a vigil held for Sandra, Huckabee approached police officers and FBI agents in a highly distressed state. Witnesses described her as crying, shaking, and hyperventilating. She claimed to have found a handwritten note on the ground. The note, which contained multiple spelling errors, stated that Sandra had been locked in a stolen suitcase and thrown into water near Bucketty Road and Whitehall Road. At the time, investigators believed Huckabee's behavior was attention-seeking. She had a documented history of serious mental health disorders, including borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. She was interviewed multiple times but was not immediately considered dangerous. Evidence and witness statements.
That we found that I was interested in on your spiral notebook was that it looked like it was the same paper size. So I took your spiral notebook, you see this ruler right here? We took your spiral notebook and we measured it.
Following the recovery of Sandra's body inside a suitcase matching the description of the one Huckabee claimed had been stolen, investigators began scrutinizing her actions more closely. They noted the improbability that the same individual who reported a stolen suitcase would also be the person to discover a note accurately describing how the body had been disposed of. Additional evidence soon emerged. A retired U.S. Marine and his wife contacted police after recognizing Huckabee from media coverage. They reported seeing her SUV parked near the irrigation pond at Bucketty Road and Whitehall Road between approximately 5:30 and 6 p.m. On March 27th, the same evening Sandra disappeared. When questioned at the time, Huckabee reportedly told the witness that she had stopped because she needed to use the restroom. Surveillance footage further clarified the timeline. At 3:54 p.m., Sandra was seen walking in the direction of Huckabee's residence. 8 minutes later, Huckabee's SUV was recorded driving away. Around that same time, Huckabee called the trailer park manager to report her suitcase stolen. Approximately 85 minutes later, cameras recorded her leaving the church where she taught Sunday school, returning 30 minutes later. That 30-minute window aligned with the reported sighting at the irrigation pond. During a search of the church, investigators recovered a rolling pin from the kitchen area. The rolling pin showed signs of damage and tested positive for Sandra's DNA.
Put your hands behind your back.
You're under arrest for murder and kidnapping.
What?
Melissa, you're under arrest.
Arrest and sentencing. On April 10, 2009, Melissa Huckabee was arrested and charged with kidnapping and murder. Additional charges related to the drugging of other individuals were initially filed but later dropped as part of a plea agreement. In 2010, Huckabee pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and kidnapping in order to avoid the death penalty.
Well, the judge said today's sentence was no mystery. It was foretold a month ago. But today, the family was able to share its emotions, and Melissa Huckabee was able to ask for forgiveness.
She was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. At her sentencing, Huckabee stated that she did not fully understand why she committed the crime, saying it was something she would struggle with for the rest of her life. Prosecutors suggested that the motive was attention rather than financial gain or personal conflict. Sandra Cantu's death had a lasting impact on the Tracy community. She is remembered locally as Tracy's Angel, and her elementary school has honored her memory through several permanent dedications, including the Sandra Cantu Playground, Sandra's Cottage, and Buddy Benches designed to encourage kindness and inclusion among students. In 2011, a community organizer and relative helped establish the annual Tracy Celebrates Children event, a free citywide day of play that brings families together to honor Sandra's life and the importance of protecting children. Sandra Cantu's case remains a stark reminder of how harm can come from within familiar spaces and why vigilance, accountability, and community awareness remain essential.